Oh, here we go. Looks like we've started. Let's just do a little bit of this. Hello everybody and welcome to the Reglow channel. Hello to our viewers as well down here. We're going to be entering into a space of a ritual, and we've been working on this piece here. This is episode 3 of Gestating Narratives, and before we get into any of this sewing, let us just begin with raising our imagination flag. So, standing on the land, we're standing on Coast Salish land, and so we want to acknowledge that, and we also want to think about what more we can do in our lives to regenerate that sovereign space for Indigenous peoples. Whether it's like giving resources or raising the awareness or cultivating relationship. And I also want to open that up to people for you to engage with and reflect on and think about and to share if you'd like. So we're standing here on this land, and some of my ancestry, I come from, there's like Celtic, there's Swedish, there's Spanish, there's Mexican, and so part of my ancestors were from this like region of the world. Well, maybe not this region. I think they're more around, well, maybe they moved around, who knows, but in any case, there's been a lot of disconnection around that, and especially in my family, and so entering into this ritual space, I've been curious about the cosmologies of all of the different peoples that I come from, and so something that I learned about Irish or Celtic mythology was the belief in these 3 realms of the land that we stand on, the sky above, and the sea that surrounds us. And so while acknowledging that and bringing that into this present moment of what we'll be creating, I also want to acknowledge all of these elements. So here's our imagination flag. And so we want to invoke the elements of fire, water, earth, and air to come and be present with us, as well as all of our healed ancestors and all of our power ancestors. I learned about power ancestors from this person. I'm forgetting their name now, but maybe I can remember that for the future streams, because we'll be coming back each day, and so I can come back with their name where I learned about that. So we now, with this entering into this space of imagination, we can enter into a space of our dreams and our subconscious, and the realm that can be unseen and unacknowledged when we're not in this kind of free, open space to explore this. And so I invite you all, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching a replay, I invite you to enter into a realm, a state of making or working with materials or transforming materials in some capacity, which we do throughout our lives, which we do every day. When we breathe, when we eat, when we wash, when we drink, when we light a candle, when we create, when we do anything to cultivate our lives. And so this is an invitation to bring our mind and our material realm together and to meet in this space of presence. And so as I sew, I was kind of inspired by this process of like intuition guidance through astrology videos and tarot and card readings. And while all of those are systems that can bring us clarity, different forms of divination can bring us clarity, but I feel like that system in itself is a reflection of that system. And so do I want to be looking into that mirror, or do I want to be looking into the mirror of the reality that I'm present with? And so that's where I want to bring in sewing and the analogy of sewing. And so as I narrate what I'm doing when I'm sewing, the motions and thoughts or patterns, it can become an analogy or a reflection for where you're at in your present moment as well. Because in this space also we can acknowledge how we are interconnected, and we can acknowledge us being the illusion of self kind of dissolving. And in that, I think about like oneness, I think about universality, but that's not what I mean. What I mean, because there's also the multiverse, and there's also each of us with our own perspectives and our own experiences. And so if we can be present with that, then that becomes, then where we're at, facing each other or facing our reality, can become, we can see it as a reflection, and is something that is not stagnant, but something that we move through and that we develop through. And so here we have this. Yesterday, in episode 2, we were basting this part onto, we were basting this white thing onto the blue part, and more than basting, we were like making these tailoring tacks. And so now I'm gonna go around. We left these little loops, so if you're curious about that process, you can go back and watch. It's in the Gestating Narratives playlist. And so for now, we're going around through, and if you're watching on Twitch, I'm also streaming this on YouTube, so you can find me on YouTube at reglow, RE : is that a colon where there's like the 2 dots, and glow, GLOW. And so I'm going around, or you can stay where you're at just for reference, because I'm not sure how the videos save, and at some point yesterday my video on Twitch stopped, but here we are live streaming now. So if you want to just be here where we're at now, and we're going through and we're pulling, see there's these loops that we left, so we're pulling them, and then we're going to cut it along here so that it releases, because the story that was being revealed yesterday through this process was the story of this journey with my grandmother. And also both of my grandmothers became a part of it, and it was a journey with them spiraling into the ocean, and this releasing. So I want to, this blue material, we're going to be cutting this out, but first we're going to lift this off after we placed it here, and we're going to lift up this white wing. It's kind of like a border, it's kind of like a wing, and a wing could represent like a border because this pattern here feels like a border to me, and then a wing because it looks like something that's like stretching outwards from the chest on the garment. And so releasing this like spiraling emotion from the center of the chest, from the heart space, releasing it almost like something that is no longer being held inside. And another aspect that I was thinking about this video was reflecting in the name of itself and gestating narratives, like these stories, birthing these stories, gestating. There's like something, there's new life that's growing inside of these narratives, almost like that name reminds me of, especially in this context, of what it's, the title of this piece is this feeling of narratives, of the stories of our lives, the like even like the DNA patterns of that make up our being, and intergenerational patterns. And so here we are, present with these stories between the dream realm and the waking realm, or maybe it's all a dream, which is another reason why I am holding this space for us. Because I don't think they are so separate. And so all of you watching, as a reflection of me, as a reflection of, as I'm a reflection of you, and this process becoming a process of like an interconnected process. And what I feel like in my being today, since I started this video, before I started, I was thinking like, am I really gonna like sit and talk for 3 hours every day making this? And my voice was feeling kind of acidic and like, who am I really talking to? And I was imagining that I was talking to my reflection, and then I was thinking about where does my energy to speak come from? And when I allow it to come from my creative capacity, from my deep down in my belly into my sacral chakra, and how that is a reflection of my voice. How that is a reflection of so many reflections happening. Reflections within myself, reflections with you, but all of these are also everywhere. Our consciousness where we are at in our consciousness. And look, now that I've cut them apart, I have a little yellow outline of where that seam line is going to be. But for now, I want to cut out a spiral and flip it out. No, not without going beyond this stitch line, but to the stitch line, because I'm going to need to miter some areas to flip it out. And then once it's flipped out, I can put this back and it's going to retain its shape. And then there will be flowing parts. And so this flowing from the heart moves from a spiraling, what is it called in the ocean when it's spiraling down and things are getting sucked down into it, which makes me think of looking at the top of a toroidal orb energy pattern. So, and then what's beneath it is something that's releasing. But at the same, I imagine a toroidal flow, going in on itself like that, and then spiraling around in a circle. But then I also imagine another current, going the opposite direction and spinning the opposite direction. And that makes me think of eating is something that goes in our bodies in one direction, but speaking is something that comes out. It's an energy that's it goes in the other direction. So is that just because my head is that just for my being as in human form? Is that because where my mouth is how it's oriented? Because then I think of other animals or other beings whose flow has other energy patterns. But so if the spiral for this, it's almost like transitioning from being something that sucks things inside, that like this feeling of receiving from above and like pushing out towards the bottom. It's kind of coming out and it's being released in the other direction. And like the heart was receiving, and the heart will now be giving, but also receiving. If it's flowing, if the waters are flowing out, and these yellow threads, I think of the solar plexus, and I think of like willpower and how the meaning that we create from our stories, it can be a choice to the extent that we're expanding our perception, and we open ourselves to that expansion, but also the contraction, because it makes me think of the pulse, because the ocean also has a pulse. And if this is becoming more of a waterfall that goes into the ocean, that then becomes a pulse. And in these videos, I'm not necessarily teaching techniques from a skillful place. It's more from a place of visual learning. And so what we have now, you can see this outline, these outlines, and so, but it's still attached, because it's still attached, like here where the collar was attached, and here where we stitched the gathering stitch. And going to flip this the other way so we have access to seeing where our spiral will be cut. And so if you can see here, there's a lot of like extra material in between where that collar is stitched here on this stitch line, and then here where the collar of the blue shirt and this colorful flower and black and white shirt are stitched at where they're actually, their collars are meeting each other. If you can see their tags, it's like bloop. And yeah, and so I'm finding this what I'm noticing is that like the yellow, there's quite a bit of space between the yellow and where the collar is stitched. And so I wonder if that's a good place for the spiral to fall. And then I wonder cutting a spiral makes me think of like different arms. Maybe I should draw it out first, like sketch it out lightly. To see what these shapes are doing. Okay. I'm thinking that this part between the collar and just where the yoke is, there's 2 layers here, and the shape of the spiral, I'm not sure I want to cut into that yolk. I think I'd rather it be where this part separates. Going a little bit further, and so what I'd like to do is kind of show you where I'm at in this process, and then also like if you have questions for how to do something and you also want to enter it in, you also want to approach it from this interconnected dream space, then if you have a particular question, I could possibly answer it through a demonstration or just through engaging with it. Another aspect to this practice is that we don't have a clear picture of what something will become, because we're recognizing that it is what it is, and the unfolding is part of the creative process. So now, since that center part was released, I'm just going along the edge of this yellow outline, and while leaving like a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and we can miter it in places that it needs mitering or clipping later. And when we're joining the white wings to the blue wave, the blue wave that is released. So we cut into here, we cut into the yolk. but that's okay. I think we're gonna have to flip it we're gonna have to flip it right side out to see what we're gonna do. And I'm thinking about what one of my classmates asked me when I was showing them the episode 1, and they had asked, like, how is this accessible? And like slow sewing, how is this accessible to people? I'm gonna drink some water. And I was like, I get that there's the shadow of that question, and the way that it was asked made me feel like there's no time to make our clothes, there's no time to tend to our lives, there's no time to really dive into who we are, and I just don't think that's true. I think some people definitely have more time to dive into asking questions, but I think that it's also a choice, and the deeper and deeper you go, the more that is revealed. And so another thing is that this is like, how is it not accessible to make our clothes? I think that's a question I would want to ask, because in there we see, or not just make our clothes, but like make clothes from clothes that were like thrown away. And so the question becomes then, like, how can we not? And what I find is that it's just that the economy's gotten so used to cheap labor, and people have become so removed from the humanity of people who create things that are in our lives and are in our existence. And so I think this is a form of tending, this is a form of release and creating and cultivation. And I could see how it might be easier to just go and buy like a $5 t-shirt that was made in a sweatshop. But I don't think it's easier to sit with that knowing that that is what's happening. And therefore it's not easier. I think once we see it as that. But at the same time, like, I don't want to, I'm not here to really convince you that what I'm doing is valuable, because I'm doing it because it's valuable to me. And I think that there are lots of different things, lots of different questions that people ask themselves throughout their lives, and we find ourselves in different places in our journeys. So another thing is that there are many layers to this material and layers to this process of reglow, and what I would like to share with you. So okay. Looks like I have to plug my phone in. Ooh. Okay. Let's move this around. Okay, we're back. Okay. Sometimes we have to move things around for our source of power to be in place, if you know what I mean. And so Now, here and now, we have, before we bring this over to the sewing machine, I'm just going to pin a couple places to line this up. Just pinning at the corners to get an idea, to also check and see where the waves are pouring out and where we want the finishings, how we want the finishings also, because we might need to do some other things before we really join these pieces together. And so the wings are folding in while the blue is staying there, and I'll pin a couple of places along the perimeter as well, so that has some stabilization. And yeah. I also think of, like, as we embody something, is it in response to how is it responding to other people? I think it's like this really, I think it can be deliberate, but I also think that it's like subconscious to the extent that that it really is in response to something we saw. And that even if it's not verbalized ever, it is definitely felt in our presence. And I think that that can be really powerful. But I also think that, like, a lot of times it happens while people not even realizing that that's what they're doing. Like, I guess I can speak for myself. I know that I can do that. Like, oh, looks like a pin came out, or maybe it was never pinned and now we're pinning it here. And so what reflections does this garment carry as we're opening up the conversation of these shirts? I think of like this gathering being like a thin white waisted, and when I think of waist, that's the name for like a part of our body. Above our hips, below our chest, we have our waist, but then there's also waste in the garbage. And I think there's a lot in that, in like thinking about, let's see if we can pull through this wave. But I'm thinking about waste and white supremacy and whiteness not as a privilege but as a deputization, as I heard Tango speak about, the San Francisco poet laureate was speaking about whiteness being a form of deputization for the colonies and systems and institutions. And so really who is the privilege is I don't think it's directly privileging or making somebody's life more fulfilling, because whiteness is empty, and it's not, it's like not it's not culture, it's not well, maybe it's a culture, but it's not a very vital culture. It's kind of a diseased. And so one that wastes, one that creates waste and has created waste, and like it's and the idea of this, of institutions and corporations not being accountable for the waste that they produce, and how the idea of waste is a white construct in and of itself. And so this gathered in white waste, this releasing of the waters. I mean, maybe the waters should just come out of the volume, of the girth. Maybe they need to just spill out from the center of the heart. To break through, or maybe they're at the edge of the gathering. And we also have the placket ironed out. We have a couple pieces here from other parts of the shirts that would like to be reintegrated somehow. And I would like to cut apart this collar. Oh, you can't see me. Here's my hands. Here I am. Cutting apart this collar, bringing in another material that is a part of this story. The white and the black, checkers and stripes, flower, petal, presence, space, recognizing all parts, recognizing the point of the collar, recognizing the point of our cycles and the point of our presence, filtered through our focus, expanded through our awareness. As the materials guide us through our minds, of where we bring our attention, and how do they serve as reminders of aspects of ourselves, and not rejections, but doorways into ourselves. And for me, here now, opening this collar like a fillet, this material gives way for almost a version aversion of aversion. It's something that I want to avert. And because it feels oversimplified with the flowers in the foreground and the black and white in the background. I mean, to an extent, like, that is, I do recognize a part of myself in that. The black could be emptiness or void, and the white could be light, even though we know that they're both light here, as their frequency goes in and out of existence, vibrates in and out of existence, as we do as well. And so in that space of emptiness, this serves as a symbol, and so the flowers can represent what we tend to. Yesterday I was saying it felt like a caged flower, but the flowers are actually in front of the black and white. But the black and white also makes me think of text on, like, black text on white paper, thinking of a book or a newspaper. I also think of like checkers or chess. I also think of red zoning and how different parts of the city are neglected. Like the water systems. And there are usually people who make less money than people who are more white, who hold more financial power, who benefit monetarily. But is that true benefit? Like, it's not black and white, which is why I feel like that's something that makes me want to reject this shirt, is that it's not black and white, like, because it's also because, well, humans are many different hues and colors, but then also seeing through the lens of whiteness versus seeing through the lens of our humanity is so much different. And but at the same time, whiteness is upheld through the oppression of enslaved people of color, Black people. And so even though that's a construct, even though that's a social construct and an identity construct, it's I wonder if part of me feels like that's outside of my lane to even talk about, but another part of me feels like that's real dissonance that's coming up for me with this shirt. The dissonance between like white and Black. And so to tend to like how to process those stories, in processing those stories, how can they be transformed? Within myself. Like, how do I recognize my own humanity here? I think I recognize it in the flowers. I think the black and white, that also makes me think of the written word and ink. Oh, it seems like this was fusible interfacing at one point. It's all flaky. I'm gonna have to iron this out. And before I do that, let's look at this poem to see if it has any answers for moving beyond these constructs of race and oppression and power, and move into a space of the power of our humanity. And not just humanity, but just our beingness, because even humanity can assume control over environments. And so how can I recognize my beingness in relationship with all that is, and the layers of the multiverse? Fruit is sun glow, pull through, dreaded shoulder, relaxed shoulders. Warmth I am, eggscape, escape shell, held by wonder, emerge through, blackened backs, shadows turned, face to the sun, to the fruit, morning turns and swells, responsive and rising. facing the sun into the fruits of our labor, to the fruits of our existence, of our relationships. Face to the sun, face to the fruit. And our shadows, revealing our emptiness. But shadows, I'm also looking outside here. Can you see shadows? There's so many, even here, just on the table. There's so many different densities of shadow. Blackened backs. The feeling was a feeling of shame, feeling of unknown, the feeling of otherness, but to respond to our beingness and our interconnectedness, to respond in rising. What is rising? Is it our awareness? Our backs, something that is behind us. And then we turn and we face the sun. And when we face the sun, our shadows are behind us. No, our shadows are turned and are black, held by wonder, emerge through, it's the egg scape, the escape shell, held by wonder and emerge through blackened backs. It's emerging through the blackened backs. This shell as we emerge out of our shells, as we emerge out of our constructs, even if we have to take a step backwards. What if that step backwards is an emergence in of itself? Yeah. All right. So what's happening inside of here? Let's pull it through. I almost feel like we might have to release the waves from the yoke, because that's just a clear point of release, actually. And then these pieces can go somewhere else. But I think that we had to move through that, because this is also the chest, and there's other, maybe this is where the energy emerges from the chest. Being patient with our thoughts and our processes. Sometimes they feel so visceral and obvious, and then engaging with them can be like engaging our lives with them. Like engaging these motions, clipping the stitches, deciding to release this material from the sandwiched yoke, and the sandwiched yoke. It's funny because this is called a yoke on a shirt, but then there's also like the egg yolk, you know, the egg scape, the escape. Held by wonder. And so, where is the wonder in all of these symbols? Wonder for me is in my interconnected being. And the kind of represented by the flowers in the checkered print. So, which also makes me think of like the water that the plants drink, and the pattern of the water. Releasing this shoulder seam, armhole seam. It's funny because it's like kind of a French seam, except for that part. The first stitch was not merely a straight stitch. it was a surge. And so that was sown. That's what was sown. Oh, I didn't have to go that far, at least for now, but I did. We are now releasing the shoulder seam, which is also like the yoke. So all right, we're gonna press those out now that we've released them. And so coming back to the other side. Right. What is happening? Okay. So what's happened is now there's this extra material, and all we need to think about right now is maybe just attaching these two pieces together. But the whole reason why we wanted to, okay, I'm remembering yesterday now how we wanted to have, and it doesn't have to stay this way, but we were wanting to have like pieces come out, be sandwiched into this seam, and have like pieces come out from there to reflect this color that has the scallops on it. Because I'm thinking, how can this white reflect the checkered flower? How can the checkered flower reflect the white? How can the blue ocean reflect the wings? And how can the wings reflect the ocean? And how can the ocean reflect the checkered flower? And how can the checkered flower reflect the ocean? How can they all begin to see each other in each other? And then there's these other flowers that I had found and blanket stitched and attached before I started this series. I may have recorded the process. Might have that recording somewhere. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, I think that these already do reflect each other, and it's just a matter of bringing attention to it. For example, there's a part in this white material that it has kind of like these zigzag diamond patterns that they reflect like another dimension of this checkered pattern because they're kind of elongated, and so it's almost like seeing it from a different perspective, which makes me think that it has another dimension to it. And so maybe I can bring symbolic reflections in that region. And then there's also the flowers. There's all these different flowers. And there's the colors. The colors are reflected in each other as well. And so I'm thinking of the orange in these flowers and how there's this pinkish color in the checkered is kind of becoming salmony orange, but it's not quite that tone. But I'm imagining how can the bridge between the wings and the ocean, which makes me think of another aspect of that dream that I had with my grandmother, which was how there was this like white owlish kind of bird, only it had like really long tail feathers and long feathers that were almost more like like a peacock around the head. And it was kind of like this magical white bird. I looked up into the sky as I was entering into the spiraled ocean to meet my grandmother on the furthest journey. And so there was a bridge. I was walking, there was a bridge spiraling into the spiraling ocean. And that makes me want to somehow bridge the wings and the ocean. I'll be right back. Give me 1 minute. I have to go to the bathroom. Hello, okay, I'm back. So, thanks for hanging in there. Maybe you had some time to take care of something for yourself. And So I just had like what I was thinking about in the bathroom was about like connecting to, when we connect to our intuition, how that, I'm gonna drink some water, excuse me. How that awareness can tune us into an awareness that's like beyond our logical mind. And so I always think it's fascinating when I operate from that place of intuition and how things can kind of like fall into place and come together. And I'm not controlling things, I'm just allowing it to happen. And I think that our dreams can be, it can be a source of that as well. And waking, sleeping, even though sometimes dreams feel like more vivid than others, sometimes they feel like I'm just in another sometimes it doesn't feel as profound, but sometimes it feels like I'm just digesting information, and then I think of like deeper sleep and a deeper sense of interconnectivity. And being at ease with all of this. So that can circle back around to allowing things to flow. And so, okay. I see a reflection here. There's like a small, I don't know if you can see, it's like a small, like 2 petals and then 1 dot in between them. Here. And okay. How is this focusing? Okay. Yeah, so that makes me think of like, there are these petals, there's 2 petals up above, and then there's this, well, I guess there's 1 on this one and there's 2 on this one, but and there's these petals in between. And so for here, and it's also opening the opposite direction. So is it something that I want to reflect? Because here there's also that same like elongated diamond shape, and so maybe I'll just maybe I'll be doing some embroidery, adding some embroidery to that. Maybe I'll add some orange embroidery, which makes me, and I don't want to, okay, I think that's something I want to be careful of. I don't want to overplan what I'm going to do. I also want to just allow this to happen. And so I started overthinking it because I'm trying to figure out what do I want to go in between this area. And so if I tune into my imagination and the materials that I have, it's this. Here, let's come over to the ironing board. Okay. I gotta plug the iron in. And so these are the materials we have to work with when thinking about what to put there, what to bridge between the wings and the ocean. So if in our imagination space, what do we see? I see that this flower in the checkered print is already a symbol of emergence of our interconnected being, and that seems like a bridge between the ocean and flight. It also makes me think of air. Like the quality of air is between the wings. The quality of air, the words that reverberate through the air, the words that we speak are a bridge. Well, they can be. They're not always. They can be. So the words that we speak as a bridge of the moment of these materials gathered in 4 parts, 5 parts, between the ocean and the symbols of our mind and the symbols of our physicality, becoming a bridge with the words. I see I see an orange thread. I see the creative capacity emerging. I see scallops. The scallops of the sea. I smell a sweet and sour smell. I smell a stale smell. How are these patterns reflected? They are reflected here. Do you see that? These patterns become reflections. The reflection of the bird on the water, the reflection of you and me, these reflections as the scallop, as the symmetry of a scallop. Okay, so we're going to be stitching this down this line. So I'm going to fold them back together again, and then we can line them up as we sew. We could even pin them if we wanted to be careful. I'm going to pin them at least at the start and the finish to be precise. Coming over to our sewing machine. Wonder, can you see here? Maybe if I turn it around. Okay, there we go. And bring you over here too. Our bobbin is here. I've got a black bobbin with black thread. And we have our black thread. Also, we need our foot, our bobbin case. Have our light. Bobbin case. Okay. Going inside here. This is my our FAF 130 machine, and we haven't sewn with each other for a while, and our needles, where are our needles? Well, I know we're somewhere over here. Needles. Oh, okay. Needles spilling out. Needles, 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 needles. Get our black thread. Come on over here. Needles, 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 needles. What do I need? Holes. Na na na. Size, no, maybe size 10 or 12. Size 12 will be good. Or 10. Let's do size 10. So this says universal 70-10, and I wonder what these universal capacities really mean for the sewing machine. If I had a choice, would I sew everything by hand? Well, I do have a choice. Is that something that's important to me? Yes, it is important to me. And we Why is that not lining up? So with the sewing machine today, I wonder if there's something that has changed, and if it's not going to work, perhaps we need a different foot. And if that's the case, then we will happily switch to hand sewing. I think part of why I would use a machine is to for the viewers, for the sake of the viewers. But perhaps I could have already stitched it by now, by hand. But we'll look for the foot. We'll look for the foot later. Okay. So we're going to leave this sewing machine area. I'm going to come back over to the table. And we're here. Okay. So we'll get our needle. And we can stitch this. This collar together. Single thread, and then this can give us an opportunity to make sure that we're really lining up the mirror. Okay, we'll come over a little bit. And just make sure we can look on either side to see where the needle is going, to make sure that we're really lining up the print. I can almost like see through this material, so that helps me so that I can keep a steady surface. Although the thing about using the thing about using a machine stitch for this would be that the stitches might hold better, since I'm going to be cutting them apart. But we'll press it before we do that, so that can help our process, so that they don't unravel before we stitch them. gonna make a note for myself. All right. Coming to the edge of this mirror. Heat up the iron. Excuse me. As we knot this off. Making 2 loops around the loop and tightening it to anchor with this single thread into these layers to end the stitch, and doing that a second time, clipping it. All right, so what we reveal is a mirror effect from that collar. So I'm gonna press this oops. Okay. So first we're going to iron it flat along the seam as it is, and then we're going to open it up and iron it flat with the seam allowance going in one direction. And I'm doing that so that we can have access to the stitch through one side. So I'm not opening it up through both sides, just through one side. Since we're going to be cutting it apart. All right. So now what does this mean? It means we can create scallops. We can create, actually let's leave it just flat for now. Because we're going to create a scallop and we want it to be symmetrical. So the width of this is about 3 inches. That means that the scallop cut in half is 1.5 inches. So if I take this paper and measure, fold it in half, and then measure, and well, I know we said we weren't going to use a ruler, so maybe I won't use inches. Okay. Although I do have a ruler tattooed onto my finger, so I could go by hashes. So pretty much what we're doing is lining up the edge of the seam line with the edge of this paper. So, well, how tall do we want the scallops to be? I don't know. Let's just do it this way so that we have some space. So I'm going to cut it. Wow, those scissors don't work. I'm going to cut it here so that when I open it up, this is on average, well, it's a little bit bigger, so we can cut it down a little bit narrower. some areas it's this wide. In some areas it's this wide. Let's go with the narrowest part so that we can always trim it down, but we can't trim it up. Okay, so there's that. And then to get a sense of like the curve of the scallop. We can use chalk to get a sense of the curve. We can draw it out. Okay, and then fold it in half so that we know that it's going to be symmetrical. Okay. And can kind of curve it down a little here, because that's what's nice about going between having a full scallop to go through. So now we have the shape of our scallop, and we can fold it in half, and this can be our little scallop, our little scalloped pattern. So why are we making a scallop here? To bring in the scallop of another shape. Perhaps we can work with this material from the placket to be part of that. Because if we're gonna finish the scallops off, they need a front and a back, so maybe we'll have a front and a back. We could even have, since the white's kind of see-through, we could even just back it with this white, or maybe the white will be on the front. Yeah, I'm wanting to bring in this other material as well, but it seems like these buttonholes are kind of getting in the way. So I'm gonna cut them out, because maybe we could have a scallop between each one. And then we can open this up. This reminds me that this material was something that we were concerned was holding us back from because it's so because it's snaggable. It looks kind of like a castle with different windows in it. So, yeah. That might come into play, like, well, it looks like we can, oh, scalpable, not like I'm scalping. Okay, where's my chalk? Because I wanted to sharpen this little guy. Almost like scalping the chalk of the layers so that it's more chalkable. Okay. So first let's cut from this with the seam line at the center, which is why it's folded in half. Flipping it different ways to see if there's which way it wants to go. Ooh. Ooh. All right, I think that's it. We'll cut these out. And this is what is revealed, one at a time, one at a time, each little piece. Another opening. We're just going to go down and separate them all. And then with each separation comes a slight irregulation. And so we wonder, why did we seek symmetrical scallops? And then we think of the reflection and the guidance of reflection. And now cutting off the corners. Ooh, hello. Hello. I love you. This is a surprise. Hello, winged. Wow. We have 9 scallops. And it gets very exciting with each reveal. So we have 9. And it makes me think that one arms might have 4 and one arm might have 5. But I love how each one is like their own. They remind me of orchids, like each one is their own essence. So, backing these with the white, or backing these with the blue, backing these with the wings or with the ocean. I think the white. But then where's the ocean in all of this? Perhaps the ocean will move through. Perhaps the ocean will become curves that lace through. So let us see what we have space for. How can we get 9 of these? 1, 2, 'That's so close. I think it'll work with the seam allowance. 3, 4, 5, 6, 'We'll go this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nine, but I guess I'm a little concerned that the other ones that kind of have chunks around them, I might as well do a couple more if I have space here, so we don't have to use those parts. All right, I'll cut out these scallops that are now appearing as half moons. Cutting out the half moons. Cutting out the half moons. How many half moons? We need 9 of them. 9 half moons. 9. 9 half moons. Now, to employ the 0 waste, I am thinking that we'll have some stuffing. We can always have some stuffing. We can always add a little cushion somewhere as an offering. Stuffing. Stuffing. For the cushion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow. There we have ours. There we have it. Okay. We have our 9 scallops. We have our 9 half moons. We're gonna save these for tomorrow because if we use a tiny stitch on the sewing machine, we know that they can be secured, and perhaps by then we'll have found our foot that works and our needle that works. And so let us return to the ocean and this spiral. The spiral of the ocean. I think that we want to continue this motion to create waves like this once they're opened up. And so we can use our chalk to draw out some spiraling waves. See what happens. Although there was just one spiral, I suppose this has become a ripple of spirals. A ripple of spirals. Okay, we have another ripple here. So let us see how many ripples, how long of a ripple. Visualize a ripple. Okay. Can you see this? Yeah, you can see. Okay. Can you see? Yes, you can see. Okay. There's all our scraps. How small of a scrap is considered a scrap? Is it? I think it's relative to everything else. opening up this ripple. That's a good ripple. That's a lot of ripple. I like that ripple. Okay. And our last ripple. Opening up the shape that is here. I think we have a spiral. Oh, you can't see me. We have two spirals coming together. You can see that now. Okay, so and something I'm being mindful of is the width. So the width of the ripple is somewhat consistent. And yeah, okay. This one's interesting because there's an area that has not very much ripple. But that's okay. We still have quite a bit of ripple. So in certain areas, I think that's what makes this like really beautiful and organic shapes, is that we're working with what is being revealed. All right, so here's our ripples, and these can be coming out of the scallops as well. And we can think about how we might finish off the edges. I'm thinking like a 3mm hem or something, but I don't have to use the word millimeter, just like tiniest hem I can make. And yeah. So thank you everybody for tuning in. And so we want to end this by lowering the flag of the imagination, thanking our all of our ancestors, thanking the elements of fire, water, earth, and air. And we lower the imagination flag as we leave this plane together, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.